Right. Thank you, brothers and sisters who are here, Brother Anjola, Sister Mara, Brother Pigeon, and myself. So we are gathered again. Uh, if you will recall, because it's a Saturday, and on Saturdays we discuss, we have a conversation around Africa and the need for unification of Africa, unification, the liberation, and the ultimate development of Africa. The struggle for independence was waged by our parents and their parents before them, and that liberation led to the return of self-rule to African countries. The self-rule was returned. It wasn't returned to the chiefs who held them before colonialism um, illegitimately took over the rulership of Africa, but it was returned to mostly Western educated Africans. And some of these Western educated Africans have mostly become conservatives and liberals. In the early days of the fight for independence, there were radical leaders like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and others. But since then, the continent has been is now being controlled by conservatives and liberals. The conservatives are those leaders who only care about themselves and their immediate family. The liberals care about a wider group of people, but mostly whether it's their nationality, some called tribe, or they only care about their party members. They only care about a minority, but never the whole nation. It's only the liberals, the radicals, sorry, who care about the entire nation. And there is a need for radical leadership on the continent. But radical leadership will also mean progressive leadership, leadership that comes into office and is not primarily interested in amassing wealth, private property for itself or for themselves, either as an individual or a family, which the conservatives are, or for the party or for a group of people belonging to a particular ethnic group. That is not the point. So we need a radical leadership. So the story of Matigari, who is a Kenyan, the story written by our own African writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and some of us will recall that we read his book as pupils in secondary school. I remember vividly reading the book "Whip Not Child," and this book was read as part of English literature. It was called, and but Matigari is a book that I read. I read on my own. It wasn't part of the literature. It was just me being interested in what he had to say and buying the book and reading it. And the book had a great influence on me. So the book is essentially about the return of property, the return of stolen property. So Matigari was a freedom fighter, went the bush to fight. When he returned, found out that his property had been taken over by thieves. I'm calling them thieves. But the irony is that the thieves that had taken over his property were both white and black. And this is the essence of neocolonialism. That neocolonialism is the illegitimate rule of Africa by indigenous Africans supported by imperialists who are outside. So our own brother Pigeon, who a candidate for presidency in Kenya, has presented for us 2 sessions. I missed the second one, but he's presented 2 sessions on Matigari. This is his 3rd and final submission. I believe that going forward, we shall hear from him again on all 3. So welcome those of you who are here, and those of you who will listen to this recording after we upload it onto our our YouTube channel. Yes, you are about to listen to Brother Pigeon. So, Brother Pigeon, thank you very much for agreeing to present, and thank you for your third presentation. We are eager to hear your third and final session on Matigari. Thank you so much. Over to you, Brother Pigeon. Thank you.
Thank you much, Brother Kwame. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Pigeon Odimwengu. I'm from Kenya. Yes, all that Brother Kwame has said is true. I have been sharing, of course, two parts of Matigari. Matigari is a book it's written Matigari Manjirogi, which means the patriots who survived or escaped, probably survived the bullets. So where is the bullets? The bullets were the colonial bullets that were hunting the patriots during the MAUMAU freedom fighters war for independence in Africa. And they escaped the bullet by dodging the bullets, staying and living in the forest, fighting for the freedom of Africa. They took up arms to go into the forest and to fight for their property. As Brother Comia said, property is a central thing here. The white man came to settle in White Island. He called it White Island, which was our black land. They named it White Island. And by changing it White Island, it meant that that island belonged to them. It was for whites. So they changed people who were landowners to be actually the serfs. They were now the workers in the land. The house owners became now the servants of the house. And this is how the Matigari starts in, where Matigari is fighting for his property that has been invaded by a white man who is chasing him away of his house. He runs to the forest with the help of a black man chasing Matigari out of his house. When Matigari wanted to kill the white man, he went to the forest. Now, survived the bullets in the forest until he managed to kill the white man. Then out of the forest, he realized that he has actually managed to kill the enemy, not knowing there were so many enemies outside the forest, even after the independence. There were so many still white men who are in black suits, or of course, black white men who are ruling Africa. And that's why he leaves the forest. He surrenders his ammunition and arms under Mugumo tree, which is a spiritual tree for Kikuyu community. He surrenders his weapons there. Then actually he come out as a peaceful man seeking justice and actually coming back to retain his property. So he came peacefully and he wore the belt of peace, the white belt of peace, to come and actually take back his property that were taken away. In the process, he realized that the property were already, of course, inherited by the sons of both the white man who took him away from his house and a black man who was the servant, the son of that servant black man who helped the white man to chase him away. So he struggles on how he can retain his property. But out there, he reached a place where he finds the white man has now built factories and the black men are now working the factories for the white man. In the tea plantation, the black men are actually now harvesting the tea for a white man, and therefore life is becoming very different. So in the process of trying to attain back his property, he ends up in prison in the first phase. In the prison, he now meets several people who are arrested for different issues. Some were only arrested for being jobless and walking around. Some were arrested for speaking of Marxism. Some were arrested for preaching. Some were arrested for being drunk, and others were arrested for petty crimes. And this is where in the prison they actually a lady who is very important in this story called Gushera, whom we'll still be meeting, come in to save Matigari by actually offering her body to a white man soldier who was taking guard of the prison to actually now steal the key from the white man and open the prison for them to escape. This lady called Gushera, back then narrates how her father was found guilty of taking the ammunition, the guns into the Bible to help the MAUMAU freedom fighters. So it is a war that even the spiritual leaders by then, the so-called Christian leaders and pastors, actually could not feel easy to be ruled by the white man who actually maybe introduced that Christianity to them, and they could do everything, even as they were preaching, to aid and facilitate the struggle and contribute to any way possible. And that's why this man, the father of Gushera, was finally actually killed in prison for actually when a police officer was telling the lady Gushera that you either give yourself or your body to me so that I can release your father. And because Gushera comes from that so-called religious family, where she learned that her heavenly father did not permit that, she actually decided to stick with the heavenly father. And this will bring us, of course, to the stories of the other side of our consciousness in class of the beliefs, the idealism of spirits and ideas. So he believed that the heavenly father could not accept her to give her body to that police officer to save the father. And she knelt down and prayed the heavenly father to actually rescue her earthly father. Unfortunately, when she refused this, the father was killed. And that's where she regrets. She actually ran out from even that heavenly father and now decided to forget about the heavenly father and actually hate the police white man for actually killing the father. But at this time, when Matigari is now arrested in prison because of reclaiming the property, and she had known Matigari through a restaurant, and Matigari came to save her life when the police officer was setting dog to actually intimidate, and everybody was silent. And Matigari actually shouted and told the people that we should not be fearful. This man cannot be actually mistreating us in our land. So that day, Matigari and Gushera makes friendship. And that's why when now Matigari is arrested, Gushera decided now to do what she swore never to do. She gave herself to a white policeman just to get the keys of the prison to give Matigari and to open Matigari to get out of the prison. And there, before he left the prison, Matigari was renamed or nicknamed by one of the drunkard man that from now henceforth he would be called the seeker of truth and justice. And then now the second presentation, my presentation was on the journey of Matigari to seek justice. He walked peacefully all over the corridors of courts, the prisons, the shops, and even he went to the students of law. He went to the safers in the field. She went to the old women there, and nobody could actually tell where can somebody find truth and justice. And then he decides one day when he met the pastor, our preacher, who told him that there will be a minister, the government had a minister of truth and justice, and that the minister of truth and justice will be visiting his area. So he decided to attend that meeting to seek truth and justice. And in that forum, he was together with Ngaruro, who is also a very prominent feature in this, who was very close compatriot of Matigari. There's another young man called Miyuki, and this shows you the play, how the young men, the women, and actually everybody combined together to struggle for the liberation. And this call upon us also today to ensure that all of us must be involved in this struggle for liberation of our continent. So in this meeting, of course, Matigari came about to ask the Minister of Justice and Truth, where can one find truth and justice? And he narrates the scenario of what happened when the son of that white man whom he killed, who took over his family, was in this meeting and was the owner of the company. And even the son of the housemaid of that white man who chased Matigari to the forest was also present, and they were prominent people by then. Matigari narrates that how can he who own a house to sleep outside while they who never actually constructed the house now sleeps inside the house? He gives those scenarios and asks now, where can such a person find justice? And this actually brought serious issues. And the Minister of Truth and Justice, instead of providing justice, decided to command that Matigari be arrested and that the judge was now to go see Matigari to provide verdicts. So the Minister of Justice could not provide justice or could not actually answer the questions of Matigari when he raised them. And he felt the best way he could provide justice is to ensure that Matigari is arrested so that the judge could come over to pronounce justice or to pronounce the ruling so that justice could be seen instantly. And from there, Matigari and Guaruro, who also questioned the same in the because Ngaruro was the head of the workers union, and the workers had had a strike in the nearby Tifa in nearby factory. So Ngaruro was also demanding for pay rise and so many other things. But in this meeting, when Ngaruro was demanding for pay rise, the owner of the factory, who was now the son of that white man, decided to offer donation to the government, and the minister could actually take the donation in charity, and therefore minister could not rule against the company. So he ruled against the workers. And that's why the worker defender who spoke, Ngaruro and Matigari, were arrested instantly, taken to a separate room. And when they were in a separate room, now the minister called for justice and a judge was sent there. And then judge came and gave his pronouncement. And in his pronouncement, he said that Matigari and Ngaruro are supposed to be taken to mental center because actually they are not mentally fit. That's what the judge said. So part 3 starts from the prison, from the mental center. That's where our part 3 is starting today. So that's a bit recap of where we've come from. So while in the mental center, the part 3 starts by this sentence. Matigari made the decision while still in the mental hospitals. It dawned on him that one could not defeat the enemy with arms alone, but one could also not defeat the enemy with words alone. One had to have the right words, but these words had to be strengthened by the force of arms. In the pursuit of truth and justice, one had to be armed with the armed words. These are very heavy words that we'll have to come later and maybe discuss them. And they say, when the workers in the metal returned from where he practiced the skill far away from home and found an ogre starving his important wife, did he send the ogre peace greetings? Did he not sharpen his spears? Justice for the oppressed comes from a sharpened spear. This is what done in Matigari while he was in prison. And that will be the same question maybe we must ask ourselves across the continent. Will we greet our neo-colonizers with peace? Anyway, let me proceed. He removed the belt of peace he had worn earlier and tramped it down on the ground. So Matigari is actually realizing that peace is never going to work for him. And instead, he decides now to take the belt of, he decides now to go back to his normal strategies of going violent. So from there, we are not told what happens, but the news come in at 10 a.m. after Matigari made the resolution that the news from the Voice of Truth said that a group of patients had escaped the mental hospital. It was not known how they managed to escape, but they suspected they had used a file to cut through the mess that ran around the hospital. The hospital administration was completely at a loss as the patients had obtained a file for all instruments of violence, such as sticks, razor blades, nails, and everything sharp prohibited from the prisoners. So the police were still investigating the issue. So Matigari here is very clear that after Matigari made the resolution, probably himself and his friend Mangaruro escaped the prison. Then, of course, there were always news that were coming from that radio station, The Voice of the Truth. And one of the news that I feel I should read here for us to get the essence of neocolonialism, it said that in that news item when Matigari left, the news radio station said that while waiting for more information on the escaped madmen, they were referred as madmen, we've just received news that Britain and the European community have given this country a loan of several millions pounds for the development of administration of instant justice. Instant justice. The loan will be used to buy handcuffs, hand and leg chains, hands and leg chains, then other things, uniform for prison wardeners, electric fences, and to help the guards, the prisons, and the rest. Then it said that the United States government is requesting the World Bank and IMF to give this country a loan for development under the defense of the rule of law, truth, and justice. So those were part of what was coming from the news at that day. And it's very interesting that the loaning system had started being used since then, that the governments of foreign governments were giving loans to this government. And funny thing, one of the loans that they were giving this was for justice. So then things continue, and then One thing that is also very important here to remark that when the priest who told Matigari to go for the Minister of Justice to seek justice and truth, when he heard the news about the escaped madman, he knelt us, he went down on his knees and frantically began pleading with God. Oh Lord, you didn't give me a chance to visit those in mental hospital. So if it should happen that you have come back as an disgust madman, remember, oh Lord, that I was preparing to go there tomorrow. So this is a priest who was actually preparing only to ensure that he does things that are right and that every time he's in good books with the God and whatever. But remember when Matigari went to him to seek justice and ask him these questions, he could not answer the questions Matigari did. So then later on, Matigari, the story emerged that Matigari, Gushera, and Miriuki, who were sitting under leisure. So Matigari, Gushera, and Miriuki. Miriuki is this young man I've said that he was one of the street boys who actually invited Matigari to his place in the where young men were staying in the old vehicles. So Matigari had walked with this young man Muriuki and this lady called Gushera all along. So it seems Matigari and Muriuki and Gushera are the same people who went back again to help Matigari escape the mental hospital. So Matigari is appearing for the first time after the hospital, where they were hiding somewhere as they were trying to lay down, as they were trying to see the way to escape back. Then Matigari said again that he wanted to go back to his house. So even after he was arrested in the first place for going back to his property, after going to the mental health center, he still came back actually to go back for his own property. So then when he was asked, where do you want to go? He said, I want to go back to my house. Then they actually said that could not be possible. But he asked one thing, do you mean that I should seal my life in a tomb of silence? That I should abandon all the produce of my hand and my hands? Do you mean that I have to leave everything to the parasites? The labor of he who sows to them who never sows. He told Gushera, listen to me, Gushera. The world is upside down, but it must be set right again. For here I have seen that in our land today, lies are decreed to be the truth, and the truth is decreed to be lie. Theft and corruption have become the order of the day. That is what people pride themselves on. Should the shepherd and the shepherdless let the wolves and the hyenas herd their sheep for them? This world is indeed upside down and it must be set right again. The builders want a place to which to lay his head. The tiller wants his harvest. The worker wants the produce of his labor. We have refused to be the cooking pot that just cooks and never tastes the food. That's what Africa is actually. Or do you want our women to continue trading their bodies for a few coins? Our children too. Do you want them to continue scavenging in dustbins for leftover like vultures? Boy will never sleep in my house again. So he swore that he was going back to actually seek his house. Then he was asked, suppose they arrest you again and take you back to the prison or mental health. They might do something worse to you. But check his response. He says, let me tell you one thing, whether they imprison me, detain or kill us, they will never stop. We who toil from struggling against those who only feed on our toil. Between the producers and parasites, there will never be peace, or unity, or love. Never. Supposing our forefathers and foremothers had behaved as if they had no eyes to see, no ears to hear, and no tongue to speak, where then will we be today? Yesterday, yes, only yesterday, I believe that if I wore a belt of peace, I will be able to find truth and justice in this country. For it has been said that truth and justice are mightier than the armed power. That the enemy who is driven out peacefully by negotiations never come back. but the one driven out by force alone always come back. Yet, where did that kind of thinking land me? First, in prison, then in mental health. If it were not for the two of you, where would I be today? Still in prison or mental health since last night? The last night, then, I have now learned a new lesson, or rather, learned a new and old lesson. The enemy can never be driven out by words alone. No matter how sound the argument, nor can the enemy be driven out by force alone. But words of truth and justice, fully backed by the armed power, will certainly drive the enemy out. When the right and might are on the same side, what enemy can hold out? In a wilderness dominated by beasts of prey, or in a market run by thieves, robbers, and murderers, justice can come only from the armed force of a united oppressed. So he continued. Then, of course, he went back. They told them the same story of how he came out of the forest with the arms AK-47 and a pistol and everything else. He told them how he had hidden them under the mugumo trees. Then he said, yes, we might go back to the forest and pick my arms where I left them so that we can come for the struggles. And that's how now they start thinking of their ways out on how they want to go back to the forest to pick their properties. Then all along they went again. Then they found, of course, as they were moving along, they saw a vehicle in the wilderness where they were hiding. They saw a car. And in the car, they first of all were afraid who can be inside that car. But their mind, of course, Matigari's mind jumped on something that he might use that car actually to go and get himself to the forest. Then when they went to the car, they found that there was Muriuki was sent to the car. And when he passed by, he found a woman and a man making love in the car, and they were all naked. Surprisingly enough, the woman was the wife of the Minister of Justice. Then, after that, he came back and told Matigari that there's a guy and a woman who make love in the forest. This woman, as I've said, was the wife of Minister of Justice. Then the man who was with the woman was the driver to the woman. Then they thought of one thing. They'll go to the car, pick the car, and actually take the woman and the man out of the car. And that's how they went. They took the car and they chased the man and the woman out of the car. Then they now started riding with the car, trying to move from places to places. And then in the process, because they were having now expensive car, Mercedes car belonging to the government officer, but they did not know at that particular moment that the wife was belonging to the government officer. But as they were riding now, Matigari goes around places where he is now giving us different views of how the world was different between the world of the poor and the world of the rich. And now he gives us a bit story that I'd like also to share here. So as they were driving,
Can you hear me?
And now, one of the stories that I would like to share is that behind the front seat was a little bar. So Miruki pressed a button and the light came on. The light door opened and the row of glasses appeared arranged in the bar. That's the description inside the car. There were different types of drinks. There were Chivas, Gordon Dry, gin, Bristol, and everything else. Then they decided to drink. There was an air conditioner in the vehicle, and the vehicle was just expensively enough. But as they were moving along, now they started to check along. Then Miruki described how the city were looking like. He said that on either side of the highway, they were now driving on where tall buildings, neon lights flash from various names: American Express, Citibank, Barclays, Bank of Japan, American Life, Intercontinental, the Hilton, Woolworths, Whimsy, Kentucky Fried Kitchen. Those were what they were seeing as they were riding along. Then, funny thing, Muriuki asked Gusher, have you ever been here? It means these are people who are living in the other side of the world where children were actually going to scavenge for some leftover food, where on this other side people are living expensively. So they moved along the way. Then as they were going, even then the woman in the car, that's where now the lady Gushera remembered the woman in the car was actually the wife of Minister of Justice. Then he was asked, "How do you know?" He said, "No, I've seen the photograph in the newspapers." So they were still in their own stories as they're moving along the country. Then Matigari now turned on the radio. After a bit of soft music, news came in. U.S. has rejected the recent proposal by the Soviet Union for the domination of all nuclear weapons on Earth. U.S. has decided to militarize space. U.S. and Soviet Union have launched more spaceships. So those were some of the news that were coming in. And the news that was coming in was that guerrillas in El Salvador have blown up a railway bridge in the capital city. They said that they will never relinquish their arms until the US and its lackeys in El Salvador accept the democratic process. So they were still moving along as they get their own stories and they listen to the radios as they take their ride around. Then all of a sudden they reach somewhere as now Matigari decided that okay, they will not go together to the forest because the reason why Matigari took the vehicle was to take him to the forest. Then he told Nuruki alighted at some point to go bring the young men, the children. He went to bring his fellow street boys so that they could accompany Matigari once Matigari is from the forest. Then the lady Gushara also alighted somewhere as she was going to do some undercover to get the information that was necessary. Then Matigari went along until he parked his vehicles at a petrol station. Then while he parked his vehicle at a petrol station, he went back to at least try to take some breaks as he was trying to survey what was going on. And in the petrol station, he also wanted to get some petrol to fuel his vehicle so that he could go to the forest to pick his arms. Then all of a sudden, uh, he saw somebody whom he was with in the prison. This was actually the informer who was in the prison. Then he knew that things were wrong. He decided actually to take the vehicle and started going very speedily towards the forest. But unfortunately, in front of him, he met the vehicles of a police officer. Then at the back, there was another police officer. So he was actually put into the center. Then as he was put into the center, he was unable to do what was necessary for him. So he decided to dodge the police officers a bit, but all of a sudden he was overwhelmed. So what he decided was actually to go straight back to his house because now he could not have time to go to the forest. So at the place where Matigari was to go to, he actually, let me say, back to his house, his property house. People were already preparing to come. The newspapers and the journalists were already there because the new Matigari was coming finally from his actually forest with armed to take over his properties. And therefore, everybody was ready out there waiting for Matigari to come. Then Matigari, being overwhelmed with these cars surrounding him, he decided that he will now go straight to the house. And he says the police cars followed him. Matigari could see them in a rear mirror, but he realized that although the police cars were faster than the one he was driving, they were avoiding driving closer to him. He understood. They thought that he was armed. And then the radio announced that the people who had escaped were already harmed. Matigari felt the laughter in him. But even so, come what may, Matigari resolved that he will not let that boy steal his future, his house. So then he made up his mind as to what course of action he was to take. He said the house belongs to him. Fortune favors the brave. That's what he said. He will follow the way of irregular revolutionaries. He took the road leading to the house. The police continued following him, their blue lights flashing across the evening sky as they rotated. The sirens fell all over. What a surprise. It was for him when he came to the road leading to the house. The whole country seemed to assemble there. Cars were parked everywhere. Every single space on the both sides of the road were taken. There were so many people. Soldiers were evident everywhere, carrying guns and torches. The security lights of the house were on, lightening up the grounds around the house in this direction. So some policemen walked around with their dogs. This time there were not just two that Matigari had come across, but there were many more. It was as though the dogs too were waiting for Matigari to come. Just then, the crowd spotted a Mercedes escorted by two VIP cars, two police cars. Everybody thought that it was a VVIP arriving. Matigari must be somebody indeed. The police driving after him were very pleased with themselves. Ha! They thought they have got him now. They knew the road of which Matigari had taken was a dead end. Then they slowed down. None of them, none of the people present knew what was going on. Only Gushera and Muriuki, who had known now Matigari was coming to the house, knew what was going on. Then, all of a sudden, the policeman standing at the gate opened it and saluted Matigari as he drove in. They never knew it was him. They did not know who the one in the car was. They simply wondered, who is this dignitary? Everybody was whispering the same question. Who was the dignitary in the Mercedes Benz? So fortunately, Matigari got into his house. The gate was just open in a vehicle and he got himself into his house. Then all of a sudden, they all knew that how the government of the ruling party were worried about Matigari, second coming. Even if Matigari were Christ himself, he must be arrested immediately. So Matigari drove towards the garage and swung the wheel on one side, the nose of the car now pointing towards the main entrance of the house. He drove straight into the door, taking it along with him into the building. The police cars came to a sudden halt outside. The policemen in the inn then came out. So Matigari found himself inside his house and the police were locked out. Then they started saying, there is a gang of very dangerous criminals inside the house, they said. They are armed. So everybody was asking Matigari now when he was inside his house to surrender or they will bomb him. He refused. He was just silent inside there. Then they tried all the best. They were now counting 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Then suddenly a ball of fire bursted out of the windows of the house. And now it was as though the people's mouths were also suddenly open. They shouted and scrambled. The crowd surged forward towards the house. The soldiers were completely taken by surprise. They could not hold back the surging crowd. Then the people started cheering. The boy's house is burning. They sang. Some people tried to climb into the house, though those windows seemed free of smoke. They wanted to loot the house. Then everybody celebrated. But all of a sudden, Matigari did not actually got burned or killed or died in the house. He managed to escape. And when he escaped, it's only Bushera and the lady and the young man Muriuki saw him. So they went to the forest. They were running now towards the forest as the police officers were following him. They chased him towards the forest with Bushera and actually Muriuki. Then close to the forest as they were getting inside, the torch of the dogs and everything else were surrounding them. The helicopters were up there chasing them. Then unfortunately, Bushera was actually shot on her leg. Then Matigari had to carry Bushera, but he told Muriuki to run towards where the guns and everything itineraries were, where the ammunitions were. Then actually, that is how Muriuki ran towards the Mugumo tree. Muriuki dug up all the things that Matigari had hidden. He took out the pistol and cartridge belt. He counted them. He took the AK-47. He dug up the sword and laid in one side. He put on the cartridge belt across his chest over his left shoulder, that it was in his right. Finally, he picked the AK-47 and swung it over his shoulder. He stood for a while under the Mugumo tree, and then he heard the sounds of a hoof nearby. His heart skipped. Then Muriuki watched as the rain fell. His grace swept the banks along where he stood. He looked across the river. Far, far away, he could hear the distant sounds of the sirens. Because what happened when Matigari was running towards the forest at the bridge, he was not able to escape with Bushera on his hands, as he was now carrying Bushera. Then all of a sudden, they actually fell into the water. And the waters took them away, but Muriuki managed to go over to the itineraries and took their arms and everything then. And suddenly, he seemed to hear the workers' voice, the voice of the peasants, the voice of the students, and other patriots of all different nationalities of the land, singing in harmony, victory shall be ours, victory shall be ours, and victory shall be ours. That's the end of my story, and that's the end of the story, Matigari Manjirugi. Thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Pigeon, for sharing the third part of Matigari with us. So, no, thank you so much. So, brothers and sisters, Sister Ida has joined us since. So we've heard the last part of the story, how Matigari in the end managed to enter his own house, but then he escaped from conflagration and then further escaped through water. And yeah, so thank you very much. Let's now have a discussion on what we have read, we have heard. So I have made some notes, but everyone has heard. When you are responding, feel free to respond. Feel free to contribute, not only from what you heard today, but also the first part and the second part. So thank you very much. So I'm going to open the floor so that we can all hear. We can all contribute. So thank you very much. I will go one after the other.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll call us one after the other to speak or to say what you would like to share. So, Brother Anjola, I think you wanted to say something. So you can be the first
Okay, so
to contribute for us.
okay, I'm on the road, but let me just ask my question quickly.
Yeah.
What would you say is the regulation? Okay, so from the laws that I've been listening to, what would you say is something that is going to be happening in terms of the African Service Revolution that was be taken note of in the both in the masculine and feminine gender, in terms of loans, justice, and in terms of business rules?
Is that question with respect to what we had? Was that a more general question?
Yeah. No, it's a general question. Part of it was what I heard from what he said.
Okay. Yeah, he did. Yeah, the reading did refer to Minister of Justice, his wife, and so on. So that question, Brother Pigeon, is for you. Would you like to respond, Brother Pigeon? So, Brother Jola, thank you very much. Brother Pigeon will respond.
Okay, I'm on the road. Let him go ahead. I'll just acknowledge.
I'll say that in the process where Matigari was seeking justice in the second phase, he tried all over to seek justice despite of the laws existing, despite of a Ministry of Justice existing, but it seems that even those in the corridors of justice or in the courts could not actually identify where justice could be found. And even the Minister of Justice, even having known the law, could not actually identify where justice can be found. And that's clearly depicting even what is the scenario today, that even justice can never be found. And therefore, there's been a scenario that justice delayed is a justice denied. Is very limited despite of having judiciaries across the continent today. It's very hard and very rare for somebody to get justice. And actually, we are not either in common with what is the justice. What should justice look like? And you see, it's like when you go even in any court, somebody who has offended you still demands his justice, while he is the one in the offensive side. And even you demand your justice, and they will be told, these laws have been actually crafted, that somebody is not guilty until found guilty, and somebody is not capable until found guilty, and they'll say even the arrested person or the convicted person still has his rights. You see, so it beats the logics, and that's why I'll say that it's very hard, actually up to date, to actually identify where can we find justice, because even the corridor of courts on laws, there's no still justice. That will be my simple representation and my simple.
Yeah, thank you, brother, for your response. So, Brother Anjola, you heard what Brother Pigeon's response is. Did you have a follow-up question? Are you okay? If you have a follow-up question, then we can hear from Sister Ida, whose hand is up. Thank you very much in the meantime for your question, Brother Anjola. Sister Ida, yes. You may unmute yourself and ask your question.
I think half of the answer to also the question was that last week Sister Wangari was on, and she was saying that it's a true story from the freedom fighters, the Kenyan freedom fighters. At least that's what I understood her to have said. And that
Sorry, who said that? It was a true story?
Sister Wangari, who is the one who is usually has something to
Okay,
do with the
right.
Kenyan land and freedom fighters. And she says it was a true story or written by one of the land and freedom fighters as a true story. Is that not so?
Yes, in fact, in fact, I remember sister explaining that Ngugi is a son um, of the MAUMAU uprising.
Yeah.
He's a son of the fighters, the MAUMAU warriors. So that's why he knows the story very well. All right, yeah. Thank you. Did you have a question though, Sister Ida?
No, not really, because I've come in late.
Okay.
Sorry. Apologies.
All right, thank you. I would want to comment on brother Angela's question, and to say that I think seeing the Minister of Justice's wife having sex with her driver somewhere not far from the forest, it it seems to me that what we are being told are two things. First, that there is corruption at the highest level, of government, of the new colonial government or the post-colonial government. There is corruption at that high level. There may, in fact, that even perhaps there were no moral laws, and because if the driver of the Minister of Justice can be sleeping with his wife, what does that say? One of the labor ministers in this country had something similar happen to him. His wife was seduced by not the driver but his security guard. His security was the one that seduced his wife. So that's the first thing. That there is immorality at the very top, or lawlessness. The other thing is that how should we expect, or should we expect justice in a new colonial state? Will the ordinary people ever get justice from a new colonial state when a new colonial state itself is founded on the theft of private property? So the new colonial state is founded on the theft of African property and the continued domination of the African and the use of the African property for the benefit of non-Africans. So if that is the case, if that is the structure of neocolonialism, that its whole purpose is to continue to get the pot to cook so that it eats, and the pot itself never eats. Can the pot ever get justice from the eater of the food that comes from the pot? So I think this strikes at the heart of the injustices at the heart of neocolonialism. And that until the kingdom comes, the black kingdom where the black woman takes her place and the black man takes his place. Not until that comes and the properties return to the rightful owners, then there cannot be justice. The Israel-Palestine debacle, the recent debacle, is an example. How will Palestinians ever get justice from an Israeli state, from the state of Israel? The state of Israel itself is founded on the colonial project of taking the land of Palestinians. and given it to Jews or to Israelites. So can Palestinians ever get justice? So the issue of Palestine, the issue of the MAUMAU, the issue of the freedom fighters, whether in Algeria, as happened during the Civil War, or in Angola and other places in Africa. All those fights were essentially about property, whether the African can get justice. And if we can't get justice through thought alone, and then we can get justice, we must get justice also through action. And the question becomes, how are we going to arm ourselves, fight for this justice, when the imperialists have all the powerful weapons, but they even have nuclear weapons? How are we going to fight them? Because a bullet cannot fight a nuclear weapon. So we have to revise the armed struggle ourselves. How are we going to fight? How are we going to indulge in an armed struggle where we don't have the arms? We don't even produce them. So who is going to be on our side if we decide to fight? Will it be China? Will it be Russia? Who? So anyway, I'm commenting on Angela's question that Brother Pigeon answered. I'm just adding to what Brother Pigeon said. Brother Pigeon, yeah, please come in. I'm sure you want to add something. Yeah, carry on, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to point out two things. One is that these are three phases of the armed struggle or the liberation struggle. The first phase was the phase that brought independence, that Matigari represents as he was in the forest, and killing the white man might symbolize us getting independence. But when he came out, there was a struggle for liberation. As the Nkrumah team said, there was a struggle for freedom in 1958. And once freedom was attained through independence, there was no struggle for liberation, which we are struggling until to date. And then what happened is that Matigari come back to struggle for liberation. And this can represent the generation of Nkrumah, the generation of Sankara, the generation of Gaddafi, and the other generation. Then he is killed in the process. But what we must know that before he died or before he was taken by water, he had passed the baton to the younger generation. And the younger generation is where Muriuki is representing. And Muriuki armed themselves with actually arms to come and fight for liberation. So this must resonate in us as the Pan-Africans that the battle and the mantle for liberation has now been passed to the younger generation, myself and other youth in this continent. And that in this struggle, we should not be armed with the same tool that our founding fathers or our freedom fighters armed themselves with. The likes of Gaddafi armed themselves with only words, with ideas. The work of Nkrumah decided to be peaceful a bit and armed himself with ideas. But the ideas never worked out. And that is what we should know, that after Matigari came from the hospital, he realized that the only peace alone could not actually attain the liberation. And that's why I think the young men like Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso is realizing that the peace that their founding fathers or the first generation of freedom fighters or liberations armed themselves with could not work out. And therefore they're coming with purely armed with, of course, guns and everything else to take over the liberation struggle. It doesn't mean that that's the way forward, but it is very clear from this book that history can tell. If we arm ourselves alone at peace and going with peace, that's what he asked. If you find the ogre eating your children, will you greet them? Will you send them greetings? And this is what's going on. The ogre is eating the children of Africa. The ogre is feeding on Mama Africa. The Europe and the French, as Brother Kwame used to say, have refused to grow up. Will you be greeting them and say hi to them so that they will stop milking our Mother Africa? And this must resonate to us as one of the way forward plans for our liberation. That as we prepare for this third phase of liberation, we must actually not focus too much on peace, because these people, peace have been tried and never work out. Those who tried peace were arrested, taken to mental health centers as mentally ill, and that's like the rights of Akina Nkrumah was impeached, Sankara was assassinated. Those are people who came more peaceful enough to fight for liberation, but that's what they got. Now, our generation, in order to succeed, we must rethink about it. If we are going to go the same method, we might not actually achieve anything else. But apart from that, I want also to bring back the beginning of this sentence, and I want to repeat it again. as it said that one had to have the right words, but these words had to be strengthened by the force of arms. So, as we even prepare the words for liberation and the struggle, it must be prepared by the force of arms. In the pursuit for truth and justice, one had to be armed with armed words, not only words, armed words. And that's why, it's a class consciousness, we are trying to do much of the research to ensure that even as we speak of liberation, we are speaking with armed words, not just normal plain words that we speak all over. Then I'd like to say again, then it says that when the workers in metal returned from where he practiced the skills far away from home and found an ogre starving his expectant wife, did he send the ogre peace greetings? This is a question to all of us who are struggling for Pan-African struggle today. Will you send the ogres peace greetings? Or will you not sharpen our arms and our spears ready to do this? And he says, justice for the oppressed come from sharpened spear. So that is the clear thing that I wanted again to repeat on, so that we can make serious we can strengthen the wordings. Thank you very much, Brother Kwame. Back to you.
Thank you. Now, thank you for that. Let me just make a small clarification on what you said, which is that the liberation is in two parts. First part was the political liberation. That is when we got back our self-rule. We never gave authority to colonialists to rule us. We certainly didn't. But over a time, they began to rule us. I'm not referring to where they forcefully took the country, like in parts of East and Southern Africa. In West Africa, the colonial rule it evolved. They didn't just come with an army, conquer us and say we are imposing colonial. That's not how it happened. They came for land to build castles, to trade, and then in course of time, they started taking, I would say, they started getting themselves involved in the governance of the people. And along the line, they became the government. So that's what happened. Whereas in other parts of Africa, they landed and then they basically just took over the power and made themselves the government. So the return of political power, or the return of self-rule, is the first part of liberation. In parts of Africa, it came through a fight. In Ghana, it was peaceful. The example of Ghana is not the example of all African countries. In Liberia, in Algeria, there was a war. Algerians fought the French in order to be free, because they didn't believe, they rejected the idea that Algeria is part of France, which was the story that France was selling, that somehow Algeria is part of France. They said, no, Algeria is not part of France. In Angola, there was a war. In Zimbabwe, there was a war. In South Africa, there was a war. And the war was over land. See, so the second part of the liberation struggle is what we call economic liberation. That is the return of our property, because our properties have still not been returned to us. The imperialists are still in large part in control of our property, and our properties are being bought and sold on the London Stock Exchange. There are companies whose wealth, the company's wealth and their shares, which are traded on the basis of the gold, the diamonds, the timber, and so on. That is in Africa, on the African soil, the oil, and so on. So these companies are basically trading on the stock exchange, but yet the property they are trading in belongs to us. And yet we don't have shares in those companies. Apart from that, the deeds that they used to borrow money on the stock exchanges, here I'm also talking of the London Stock Exchange. Those deeds, where are they? Where are they now? Because remember that people brought back these supposedly signed by our chiefs that said that they owned land, that this land belonged to them, and they used these deeds to raise money on the London Stock Exchange. So where are those deeds? In whose hands are they? As far as I know, they have never been returned. You see, if you take Kenya, for instance, we know that the crown, the British crown, is still in there somehow influencing things. And that tells me from reading of it that the lands that the crown took from the Kenyan people, but with the MAUMAU fought, those properties, the deeds to those property, the crown knows something about it. So who has those deeds? And why haven't they been returned to the MAUMAU people, to the Kenyan people? So these are the issues. So the second part of the liberation is economic liberation. And until and unless we have economic liberation, we are not truly liberated. The final thing we need to remind ourselves of is that political liberation was meant to put us in political control of our land so that we can wage the economic struggle. That was the reason, so that the African state can fight its enemies. And the problem we have today is that we have balkanized states that don't have the power, the strength to take on the imperialists. But with a united Africa, we'll have a state that is big and powerful enough, with an army that is powerful enough to take on, you see, the imperialists. And here we can then begin to play global chess, where we can get other powerful countries like Russia and China on our side, so that we can face the West. Because the West pretends they are our friends, but they are our enemies. They've always been our enemy in the sense that they always want our resources. You see, and they are killing us slowly through family planning and all sorts of, dubious financing of all kinds of projects. Testing all kinds of medicines and just killing our people slowly. Making our women infertile by putting things in medicine that will make our black women infertile so they can't have children, as happened in Israel. We know all these things. So the second part of the struggle is the economic liberation. But to get economic liberation, we need a state that has the power to fight at the global level. And that is why we need to remove all these conservatives and liberals from office, so that we can have radicals in office that can take over and lead Africa to the new homeland. So I just thought I'll make that clarification, that the liberation is in two parts: political liberation and then economic liberation. Okay, thank you. So let's hear from others. Samara.
So I'm just going to talk about the parts that leapt out to me. So the first paragraph about one had to have the right words, but they had to be strengthened by the force of arms. And I think Brother Fijian has already covered that very well, but just wanted to add that right now it feels like, every day at 8 o'clock, I call it the African hour on YouTube, because there's a lot of YouTube lives from different countries. I tried to catch up just to listen and to see what's happening in these countries, and there's a lot of them, which is good, that different Africans across the world are talking about the problems in their own home countries, the politics and the economies. But it also feels to me that at the moment, the stage we are is we have words. So in those words, we're trying to pursue truth and justice, but it's still words without the part yet. So yeah, so that's one. In the bit where there was an announcement on the radio, and they were saying Britain and the European community had given the country a loan of millions for the development of Eastern justice. And what's that justice? It is to buy handcuffs and hand and leg chains and electric fences to help guard the prisons. And that made me think of if it's okay to introduce another paper. It's a paper by a professor and sociologist called Boaventura do Sousa Santos, and he's a professor in Portugal, and he introduced a concept called abyssal thinking, which means that for example, in the colonies, justice is handcuffs and prison wardens and to use for subjugation, while in the colonizers' world, justice is law and civil law and political thought. So it just reminds me of that double standard that is always in the dynamic of the dominated and the dominator. If anyone is interested in that paper, I can post it in the group. And then everywhere in the country, the big question still remained: who was Matigari Majirungi? Sorry if I've murdered that. Was he dead or was he alive? Is the question. I would link that to Africa Today and say, is the fight for liberation dead or is it alive? What happened to the Pan-African movement? Can it be resurrected? Is it alive? Is it dead? Where is it? What are we doing? Then also, just to answer the question that Brother Kwame said, who will have to fight? And I think for me, the answer is we, the Africans, we have to do our own fighting on this one to liberate ourselves. Because if we don't do it ourselves, then we are always dancing to the tune of some other external force. So eventually, the fight will have to be our fight by our hands. And that's all I have to say.
Brother Kwame, we can't hear you. We can't hear you,
Yes.
Brother Kwame.
Yeah, sorry. So, first of all, thank you, Sister Myra. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And yes, just so you know, yes, please share the paper with us here on the chat if you can, and also share it on the WhatsApp group, which, as you would have noticed, has been streamlined to remove deadwood and people who don't contribute in any way, either to our discussions. They don't contribute money to pay for this Zoom that we are on, and they don't attend the class either. We don't know why they are there, and we've removed them all. We shall continue to remove deadwood. There's no point having soldiers who refuse to fight when you send them into the front line to fight, they go and they just sit down. They don't fight. What's the point in having soldiers who don't fight? You might as well not have the soldiers there in the first place. But anyway, thank you so much. So please, yes, share the papers here
will,
if you
yeah.
can, and also in the WhatsApp group.
Okay.
On the question of the fighting, I agree with you. Yes, I think the point I was raising was that how do you fight nuclear weapons? How do you fight remotely controlled weapons? Because the enemy is now very sophisticated. They don't come, they don't send men and women to the front line. They send bullets and nuclear weapons or nuclear or missiles that can kill from thousands of miles away. How are we going to fight such? If we're going to fight and sharpen or arm our words, how are we going to do that against such weapons? So what it means is that at the global level, the African state must play its chess very well, must align itself with, if there was an African state today, will align itself with Russia and with China. I think we all here understand or know that the supremacy of the West is ephemeral, it's temporary. The idea that America will continue to be the world superpower is just complete nonsense. That the world doesn't work like that. A unipolar world where one power is supreme for all time is just not feasible. No matter how powerful America is, it will one day be nothing. We know the history of powerful countries in the past. What happened to them? So the history of empires in Africa, we've had our own share of empires. Empires will come and go. So yeah, but I think someone I was raising the question of whether or not we can fight even the armors, or whether we can fight nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles and sort of missiles. And if we can't fight them directly, then what should we do? So yeah, I agree with you. We still have to fight. Yeah, we have to fight. We can't just say that we won't fight. We have to fight. We shall fight. I think Brother Pigeon wants to add, wants to respond also. Yeah, come back and then Brother Pigeon will then respond.
Okay, so I think, yeah, thanks for that. You have applied more detail than I'd actually thought about. So I was thinking more about the people. I think I was thinking about the people. What angle was I going with? I think I was just thinking whether, because sometimes people, for example, right now, what's going on in my country, people tend to think that we can just bring change by words and just talking and having discussions and having media activists or social media activists, while it's more complicated. So I guess I came from the angle of some people might think, oh no, we don't need to. There's no need. We'll just have a few protests and riots and maybe just make peace deals. But yeah, you're right. We actually have to think it through and go to also look at the practical side of things. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I make a comment? Then brother Pigeon will come in. You see, you could argue that those sort of arguments about whether we can fight with media activists and so on, you could argue that that is just a reflection of the state of powerlessness of the left in Africa. There is no country in Africa where the left controls power. So if you don't control political power, you don't control the budget, you can't arm your people, then what can you do? You can only have media activists and so on and so forth. And that's why we need, you see, One of the reasons why the decolonization movement thrived in Africa was because it had a foothold in African soil. And where was that? That was in the Gold Coast and in Ghana. So once Nkrumah became the leader of government business and then became the president later, Pan-African movement had a physical location on the continent. And so we were able to bring 1945 Manchester back to the continent. And then Ghana was then able to train other freedom fighters. And Ghana was able to host conferences and so on and so forth. What we lack today is a country in Ghana, a country in Africa that will be the center of the neo-colonial struggle. Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the soldiers there have taken office, but the soldiers have not indicated that they want to be the center for the Pan-African struggle the way Ghana was. You know, that like the way Thomas Sankara became a beacon of the Pan-African struggle. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe I'm not watching closely enough. Maybe you have. But as far as I can see, the soldiers have not invited Pan-Africanists to come and help liberate the country. They haven't. As far as I know, they haven't. They are more interested in state power. They are more interested in controlling the colonial states. And that is it. So to summarize, I'm saying that the current powerlessness of the left, of the Pan-Africans not being in power in any country, means that all they can do is to be media activists. If you don't have a gun, how are you going to be shouting? How are you going to confront people with a gun? If you have a gun yourself, then you can confront people with a gun. Matigari had a gun. And because he had a gun, he knew where the gun was. So he was brave. So he's talking, but then he knows that he has a gun under a tree somewhere. If it needs to be, he'll go and get it. He couldn't, but he passed it on to the youth. You see, but the Pan-African left today, they don't have any guns. They don't control political power. They don't control budgets. We are just powerless. And that's why we need a foothold on the continent. Anyway, let me pause there. So I'm agreeing with you, Sister Myra. I'm agreeing with you and saying that, yes, we need a foothold so that we will stop being media activists and just talk and begin to organize at the state level. You know, even at state level, it's not easy because they can attack the state like they attacked Saddam Hussein's Iraq. You know, the imperial they can take on the whole state. Ukraine is an example. Ukraine, they've taken on the whole state. So if they feel threatened, they can attack a whole state. China is very strong today, but remember that if the imperialists see the need, they will attack China. You know, that's how ruthless these people are. You know, these people are very ruthless. And so yeah. So I'm agreeing with you. All right. I'll pause there. Brother Pigeon, yeah, you can come in.
Yeah, you can come in. Thank you, Brother Kwame. I would like to give more emphasis to some few words I read before that will also help us answering some of the few things. Matigari says and asks himself, when he was asked whether he will be arrested again, he says, "You mean that I should seal my mouth in a tomb of silence?" And this is what everybody has done. Everybody's mum in this Africa. Nobody's even ready to speak. And even those who speak, nobody's ready to come out again. Then he goes ahead and says one thing. This world is upside down, but it must be set right again. And this is what we're doing here. We know Africa is having problems. We know Africa is not where it should be. But we are not giving up. We are saying that we must set it rightly where it's supposed to be. We are not giving up on that. We must set it rightly where it's supposed to be. Then he goes ahead somewhere and he says that theft and corruption have become the order of the day. This is what people pride themselves on. And that's the reality. The theft And corruption has become the order of today. The president of Kenya was known as a thief and a corrupt person, but still people went out to vote the thieves. And they say better thief that steal and give to churches. That is what the pastor say. Better thief that steal and give to churches than a thief who doesn't give. So that is becoming the order of the day in Africa. Then Matigari goes ahead and says another thing. He says that, let me read where he says. He says that he was asked, suppose they arrest you today. That's what he was asked. And that's what many people are afraid of. Pan-Africans are told, oh, they will kill you. They will take you into prison. They will do whatever to you. But do you know what he said? He said that, let me tell you one thing. Whether they imprison me, detain me, or kill us, they will never stop we who toil from struggling against those who feed on our toil. And he says, between the producer and the parasite, there'll never be peace or unity or love. Between us, those colonized, and the colonizer, we will never see any peace. And it should be clear like that. We are not out there to seek friendship or peace with those who colonize us and continue to exploit our resources. We are not there for a peace talk. There will never be peace until the day they will stop exploiting us. That should be very clear. Then he asked one question. Supposing our forefathers and foremothers had behaved as if they had no eyes to see, no ears to hear, and no tongue to speak, where would we be today? Suppose Kwame Nkrumah, suppose Thomas Sankara could not have fought for this continent, where would we have been today? And why now are we silent here when the continent and everything else is being exploited? So we should never be silent. We must and we owe it to those who actually fought for us. And the last part I want to echo says that I believed that if I wore a belt of peace, I'll be able to find truth and justice in this country. It has been said that truth and justice is mightier than an armed power, that the enemy who is driven out peacefully by negotiations never come back, but they are here with us still today. Then he finished by saying, if it were not for the two of you, today I should have been still in prison. So he said that, yet, where did that thinking land on me when I was in prison? So until we realize that Africa is now in this situation where it is, then we will know that peace does not work. They have decided to control their people through what they call the neo-colonialists, and they must learn the nation. The lesson is that the enemy can never be driven out by words alone. The West and the imperialists in Africa can never be driven out of Africa by words alone. Nor can the enemy be driven out by force alone. The words of the truth and justice should be fully backed by an armed power. That is the only thing that will definitely help us send away the enemy of Africa. So I wanted to echo those words again. Thank you very much for that.
No, thank you very much. So what you've emphasized, brother Pigeon, what you've emphasized towards the end there is the whole point of conscientism. Conscientism is essentially about two things, isn't it? It's about thought, philosophy and ideology, or the right philosophy and the right ideology, and then action, what we should do, hence positive action. So that's what Matigari is. Matigari is coding these events and sharing them so that people are armed with a thought. Last Thursday, we dealt with rationalism and empiricism. We made it clear that the African leadership view of life for the African to a rationalist, and when to switch from a rationalist one to an empirical one. We must know when to do that. And we will know that when we are well trained in leadership according to conscientism. So that is the thought. And then Saturdays, thanks to Sister Ida, our Saturdays are now principally about discussing action. And that's what we have been doing. So actually, we have heard you, Matigari, wherever you are, and we here are doing what you've asked. That we arm ourselves with thought and arm ourselves with action. And today, as we meet here, we are discussing action. What should we do to unite the continent? And we here are saying that. Let's start a conversation. Sometimes when a fire starts, it starts very small and you may ignore it. But go back and look at all the fires that have burnt forests, yeah, that have caused a lot of damage to forests. You will find that they always started very, very small, very, very tiny, a spark. Somebody went to the forest, had a barbecue, and put out the fire, but forgot a small flame. And that flame, just touched a dry something, and before they realized it, an entire forest, miles and miles, square miles of miles, just destroyed. That is how conflagration works. So we here may think that what we are doing, we may not realize that we perhaps here, and I say perhaps, may be the torch, the small light, the small fire that is actually beginning slowly to burn, the dry leaves around it. Before we realize it, before we may realize it, people will go in their hundreds and their millions to watch our videos and to hear what Nkrumah had to say. So, and this is what we mean by dialectics. And that is the other point you raise in your reading, Brother Pigeon. When you read that, he said that those who are the fighters will always be there. What he is emphasizing there is dialectics, that you can never get rid of the forces of nature. More negative and the positive are fundamental to nature, plus and minus. Okay, you can never get rid of it. You can never get rid of addition and subtraction. That is how nature is. Therefore, the idea that anybody can destroy the African freedom movement is a joke. It will never happen. It is not possible. And that is the point Matigari is making again. And that, if you like, is an affirmation of the philosophy of dialectics, which we inherited from our forefathers. You know, long ago. Philosophy in retrospect, chapter 1 of Constantism. When we're looking at philosophy in retrospect, this is something that has been handed down to us. And we are the guardians of it, and we understand it. It is part of us. It is part of our consciousness. Sometimes we don't realize, but it is there. That's the other point that he is first for study. Incidentally, in Ngugi wa Thiong'o himself, when I have listened to him, is, if you like, a philosopher of literature. And if you listen to him, he talks like that. And then the third thing that you mentioned, brother, is you said that corruption is the order of the day. That may be so. But you see, it isn't that corruption is the order of the day. Yeah? Now, but imperialism itself is the corruption. I don't know if I'm making sense. Colonialism itself is the corruption. Neocolonialism, the system of neocolonialism, is itself the corruption. So people like the president of Kenya, Ruto, and so on, Akufo-Addo in Ghana, the king in Swaziland, the president of South Africa, and all these guys, they are merely the expressions of that corruption. They are not the corruptors. The corruption is the system. You see, that is the corruption. The system has been corrupted. How? The system has been corrupted in the sense that the system has been made to divert African resources to external interests. And the African does not enjoy their own resources. Okay? The child that is behind at the back of the black woman is a grown-up white man and women who have failed to grow up and who are still drinking milk, the milk of the African woman. And they are refusing the children of the black woman to have what is naturally and rightfully, legitimately theirs. So the system has been corrupted. And because the system is corrupt, it has created corrupt effects. You see, if we change the system, the Rutos will naturally come into order. And so that is why all we need today, if you ask me, is we need one African country for the left, the Pan-Africanists, to take back government the way Nkrumah did in the Gold Coast. You see, once we do that, then we have a base on the continent. You see, and then we can send out the call. And if you send out that call, oh, Africans will come. If they can see, you can see the light. People say Africans are not ready to fight. Who says we don't want to fight? You can only fight if you know what you are fighting for. You can see clearly why you have to fight. You know, Africans will not fight for conservatives and liberals. You know, they'll take money from them and vote, but they're not going to fight. But if they have to, if the chicken has to protect its child, even if it's a snake, the chicken will fight the snake. Oh yes, the chicken will fight a snake if it means protecting its child. The chicken will fight the eagle if it, look at how powerful the eagle is, but the chicken will jump into the air and fight the eagle if it has to protect its young. African women are waiting. They're just waiting. The men are in office being, if you look at it, it's all men all over the place. You know, useless men, useless presidents. They don't know what all they are thinking about. Conservatives, liberals, they are, you know, money, their family, send their children abroad. They have no vision, you know. Anyway, let me end there. So I'm basically saying, Brother Pigeon, it's not that corruption is the order of the day. The system itself is corrupt. That is what the corruption is. The time is 8:46. I was merely commenting. So we haven't heard from other people. We haven't heard from Samara, brother, Sister Ida. We heard from Anjola, Sister Shireen. We haven't heard from you, and then we haven't heard from Sister Shola, and then Brother Kwame Gonza. We haven't heard from him. Brother Kwame Gonza, it's good you are here because you are a fan, or you have always been telling us that we need an armed struggle. Well, Matigari says that is what we need. So hopefully you can contribute to that. Sister Shireen, can you come in? And then after you, Sister Shola, and then Brother Kwame Gonza. Please, let's remember that the questions are meant to be for Brother Pigeon to answer, and then I comment here and there. But Brother Pigeon is the one that presented the book, so he really is the one that should be answering the questions. Yeah. Thank you. Sister Shireen. It doesn't appear to be ready. So let me go to Sister Shola. I'll come and Sister Shireen. Sister Shola.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. Sorry I came in a little late, so I didn't catch some of the what was said. But then some key words came to my attention. The first one is local accountability. Where we are looking at Brother Pigeon talked about corruption. So we are looking at local accountability. Where does that come in? And then we are looking at grassroots mobilization. Where does that come in? We are looking at when we say, man, know thyself, because without knowing who you are as an African, what are you going to be fighting for? That's something else. And then another piece which I would like to be enlightened on is, where do we put the ethnic and tribal leaders? And what would be their role in this fight? So I just like clarifications on some of those questions, please.
Pigeon, questions for you to answer first of all, and then others can comment. So, Sister Shola, just so I'm clear, corruption, grassroots mobilization, and then the traditional leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, local accountability, because you when you're looking
Local
at
accountability.
corruption, it's all over the continent, and if people are not ethically inclined, where you do not trust people to do what they said they would do, or if not say what they would do, but then if you are in a car passing and a policeman who is supposed to defend you would be pressuring you for money, that is not being accountable. And then even as a leader, you have to always watch your back, because you do not know when you will be stabbed in the back. So those kind of things are prevalent on the continent. What can be done first, because you have to clean your house first before you begin to look outside as to who can help move things along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you for your questions, Sister Shola. Brother Pigeon, I think you should answer the questions from the point of view of Matigari that you've just read. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with corruption. On the date that the Minister of Justice appeared in the village, there was need to have a resolution between the workers in the company and the factory who went for strike and the owner of the company. And therefore, the Minister of Justice was supposed to give justice on who was supposed to be paid. And Ngaruru, of course, represented the plights of the workers. But here is where corruption came in. In that meeting, the owner of the company, who is the son of Williams, gives or donates to the political party in the ruling party 50,000 Kenya shillings in front of the audience. And the Minister of Justice says, look at this man. He has worked for the party, he has given to the government and given to the party. May his wealth continue to flourish. Now, this is the man who has actually robbed the workers, and workers are striking. Is that not corruption? So he was corrupting the government or buying the government, so that when the Minister of Justice was giving justice in regards to the worker strike, he said that all workers must go back to work, and if they don't want to go back to work, they go create their own job. And he says that our president is a worker, and therefore this government is considering workers, and we appreciate people like Williams, who actually gives opportunity to people to work, and those who are lazy enough who don't want to work should be arrested. So that's corruption. The question is, let's check out that scenario. Why did Williams give, corrupt, or bribe the government? It's because he was already in offense. And he found that if justice was to be given, as to the Minister of Justice was to do that, it was not going to favor him. So corruption has been used for conveniency. And because the system itself has actually been infiltrated, the people were corrupt by the system. And who do they buy within the system? It's the peoples within the system. They buy the Minister of Justice, and they give him donation and the ruling party, so that the ruling party could favor them. The system actually is not that favoring corruption, but the people in the system are the weak point. And that's why Brother Kwame has said we need actually progressive people in leadership. Because as long as we still have the liberal and the conservative, they will take the bribe from the factory owners at the expense of the factory workers who are demonstrating or who are in strike. That will be my answer. That everything goes back to the leadership. The system is not wrong. In my country, the government knows that police officers collect bribes, but what do? If you are to be president who is progressive enough, will you allow the police officers to collect bribes at the expense and actually distorting people's or extorting money from poor people? That would be my question. And I think that also lands to my answer. Brother Kwame, will you remind me the second question?
Yeah, the second question was on grassroots mobilization.
Okay, I'll say again that can you see,
Brother Pigeon, before you continue to the second question, yes, I just want to remind you that in the South African miners, is it the Marikana massacre, is exactly an example of what you've just said. So the Matigari story you've just quoted happening exactly in South Africa when the Marikana miners were gunned down by the police and an ANC government. Thank you.
Thank you for that. On the grassroots mobilization, let's see. When Matigari was heading to the forest, the young man Muruki was going to mobilize the kids or the youth to come formation. The aspect that even they were working, three of them, shows the power of mobilization and working as a team. Gushera could manage to actually help Matigari get out of the prison. And look at even the ending time when Matigari was getting to his house, everybody was there. Everybody was assembled. And fire was spreading. All people were present decided to take people who are collaborating, shows us that actually people will love you because of your actions. Matigari was working in shopping centers and people were talking about him. Not so in our process of grassroots mobilization, our only strongest weapon is the words that are armed, the armed words. And those words will bring people. And those words encourage. Matigari says, fear that rules our land. So courageousness within the people can make everybody to actually follow you and can make a strong mobilization. But if you are fearful or you are liberal or conservative, who will follow you? Nobody. So the struggle and the key for the mobilization of African forces is on genuine, armed word and progressive actions. Without those things, it might never succeed. People were ready to support Matigari. When the house burned, they took it. So it only needs somebody to come out. That's my answer to the second question.
The third question is on ethnic or tribal leadership or traditional leaders. Does Matigari say anything about traditional leadership?
In Matigari, Matigari says of the religious leaders called the pastors, but there's also a story of a religious leader, the father of Gushera, who actually helped and aided the struggles by hiding the bullets, the guns in his Bible. In the wilderness, when Matigari was seeking justice, she found an old woman sweeping. And in fact, the old woman is saying, let me continue sweeping in the wilderness because our country is full of darts and I have to sweep the darts. So the question comes again. Of course, there has not been too much on the traditional leadership, but there's traditional spirit that is represented by the Mugumo tree, where Matigari actually hid the struggles and the ammunition. This can represent that our struggle and our liberation will rely on our traditions and our traditional affairs and spiritualities, because it is there where our arms are actually stored. And if we arm ourselves with our traditions and traditional spirits and traditional leadership, if we go back there and pick our arms there, our AK-47 there, we can win the war. That's what I can say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll just add to the your last answer about traditional leadership that it's a very interesting aspect that Sister Shola tell us the Mugomo tree, as you call it. What is it in Kenyan tradition? What kind of tree is it? By that I mean, what does it symbolize in Kenya?
This Mugumo tree is the tree that the
Brother Pigeon?
sacrifice, the traditional sacrifice
Yes.
could be.
What does it symbolize?
Can you hear me? What does it symbolize?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, the tree was acting as a central point where the sacrifices and the offering of the community could be given to the God of the people. And therefore, it symbolized a central unification and a central power point where the people could draw their power and where the people could actually, where the people could actually ask for forgiveness and gain strength and guidance on the way forward. So Mugumo tree up to date, even if one of them falls down today, the community of Kikuyu will come down and offer sacrifices, and they will find like it's a curse to the community, and therefore they will offer sacrifices for that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then it seems to me, from what you've said, it seems to me, in response to Sister Shola's question, that because if that's the role that the Montgomery plays, every African nationality has a material object in which is invested the spirit of the nation. So the Ashanti nation, for instance, has a golden stool, and the golden stool is the house of the spirit, the Ashanti nation. Other that's just an example. Other nationalities, I am an Ewe, and where I come from, we also have a stool, and that stool is the holder of the national spirit. Other nationalities have skins, and so on. So what it seems to me, what Matigari is saying, or what Ngugi is saying, is that it is not that we must rely on traditional leadership as in chiefs and queens, the human beings, but that we must return to the symbols that our nations, our traditional nations, that represent our traditional nations, and that is these traditional symbols that must inspire us. Because perhaps if we rely on human beings, they may fail us. But if we rely on the symbols, like the tree that you are referring to, that that is a better basis for the struggle. So thank you very much. Mr. Shola, you've heard responses. Did you want to come back?
No, sir. Thank you so much for those answers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much also for those wonderful questions. On the question of traditional leadership, of grassroots mobilization, Brother Pigeon, I think you have something there for the ATP in Kenya, yeah? How you could go about doing that. So maybe Matigari will be our novel as a class. This will be our novel that we'll come back to. Just as Constantism is our philosophy book, maybe Matigari will be our political manual, if you like, or our our freedom fighting manual that we can come to again and again and again. Okay, so let's hear from Brother Gonza. Brother Gonza? Brother Gonza, are you there? Okay, it probably is not. He's not with us. Okay, the time is 9:02. So as Mr. Gonza is also not saying anything, we'll end here. And yeah, I'll just play Bob Marley's Africa Must Unite, and then yeah, you can leave us and when you like. Yeah.